probably looking at this as, what is this presentation about? Self-state model, what is this? So I actually want to share this as something that I train all my clients in, pretty much all my clients. Not just my clients with same-sex attraction or homosexuality, but this is something I found to be very helpful for pretty much all my clients, but especially trying to build any sort of compulsive issue. I started getting into this type of work with sexual struggles 2006, after I interned at a member ministry at Citizen Connection. It was a counseling center that specialized in all sorts of sexual issues, not just homosexuality. And I got to participate in the recovery groups. They were mixed. They had guys with heterosexual sex addiction issues, guys with same-sex attraction, and it was a powerful internship experience. Went from that back to my college, at Southern God's School, Valley Forge Christian College, now University of Valley Forge. And we didn't have any sort of counseling services. We didn't have any sort of support groups. There's nothing for people who are struggling with sexual issues. The mentality of school back then was very disciplinary. So if someone struggled or they broke any rules of conduct in the school, they wanted them to go to student life in order to get disciplined. And God led me to start up a support group on campus, and I had to deal with opposition from the school to even start that. And so this was one of the tools I used in my group. Eventually things changed, thank God, with the school, in that the head of the student life department got replaced, and the school then became more open to why it actually helps students. So even after I graduated, I started, my wife was still a student, I still lived in the area. So I started up a support group for guys who were dealing with pain stroke packs, which was marketed as like an abuse or trauma recovery group. But every school year, half the guys with same-sex attraction, the other half doing heterosexual sexual issues. And I ran that group for 8 years. Eventually I got my master's and I said, hey, you guys been counseling for years, why don't you hire me? So I'm the campus counselor there. I'm phasing out though because I'm just involved in so many things. But well, I would do this recovery group, and one of the things we do would be like an accountability portion or like a check-in time. We use a lights system to track things. Greens for what are the good things you're doing, good things for your health and recovery. Yellows, what are the trigger areas, reds, what are the ways you acted out. And so we use that as an opportunity to do analysis of, well, what led up to an acting out experience. So I had this one guy in the group who we had a discussion one time where he was using like a chat room or like it was like web TV type thing. He was having cyber sex this weekend. And so I was asking him questions like, okay, at the time when you were acting out or you're tempted to, what were you feeling at that? And he just like nothing. Felt something. What was going on before he started acting out? And it's apathetic. I didn't care anymore. It was just sort of obtuse. I'm like, it was frustrating. And then I came across this video by Joseph Nicholas Sr. And it's a video. It's now his whole channel's been taken off YouTube. So, but you can find it, I think, now on Rumble. But the video was explaining what he calls the scenario preceding homosexual marriage. Where he goes over these different self states. And it's like the light went on me, like, this explains it. So I share with you what I've learned from him and how this helps, not just with same-sex attraction, but also when I'm watching, like, this just makes sense for just addiction in general. So I teach this to all my clients. So some objectives for today. We're going to do an overview of Nicola's self-state model for the scenario preceding homosexual enactment, but you can also translate this into maybe your own life in ways, or when you're working with someone with any sort of compulsive issue. And we're going to also parallel it to polyvagal theory, which is the big innovative thing in the world of trauma treatment and anxiety treatment. So I'm going to show how there's neuroscience that helps validate Nicholas' self-state model. And we're also going to parallel it to the different types of threat reactions that we're aware of. And then I'm going to give some practical tips on what to do, what are some necessary responses for each self state. If you want to learn more, best resource would be Nicholas' Senior's book, Shame and Attachment Loss, the revised edition from 2016. Fortunately, he finished it a year before he guy. So chapters 10 through 14 are a full exploration of these topics. So I'm just giving you the condensed version of this. So first, what is a self state? It is essentially just a status of what you're thinking, feeling, desiring, and doing, what you're behaving on. The idea, though, is a self state, a legitimate one, a valid self state, is one that leads to affective competence, one in which you are feeling and dealing. So every emotion has two main functions. They communicate, so our feelings communicate something about how we're assessing the state of our needs, desires, boundaries, our rights, our values, and so they're felt, they're embodied. So I refer to emotions as your body's dashboard for your soul. They indicate what you're assessing. So say, at a very basic level, hunger. Hunger is an emotion. It's like, oh, you feel the ache, you feel it like empty feeling in your stomach, your stomach growling. Your body's communicating something. I need fuel. Fill me up. And so then the next thing emotions do is they motivate. So they communicate and then they motivate you to take certain actions to address whatever that their need is being assessed. So a self state is supposed to help you with that sort of affect regulation. Be competent in meeting your needs that the emotions are indicating. And so Nicholas, you use this model to explain homosexual enactment, but like I said, this is explanatory power for quite a lot. Just compulsivity in general, but I also teach this. I was teaching this to a client who was going through the grief process after her father died. And help you realize, oh, these are certain, there's needs I need to take care of as I'm grieving. So it's just helpful. So, like I said, self states that provide affective competence involve two components, feeling and dealing. Therefore, there are some self states that we'll get into that are considered invalid or illegitimate self states because they're missing either feeling or dealing or both. So, when I say feeling, what am I referring to? Feeling is taking, not just that you have an emotional feeling, it's more active. It's we're feeling our feelings, we're taking conscious ownership of your internal emotions. You're identifying them, you're also containing them. So to feel doesn't necessarily mean that you're exploding with anger. It's like, well, I'm just feeling angry, so I'm just gonna explode it. No. You can feel it without expressing it indiscriminately. So you're just able to identify it, contain it, and then you can use wisdom in what you do with it next. Dealing. Usually it's going to involve honestly expressing your emotions and your needs. And doing what's necessary to meet the needs that the emotions are indicating. So to involve verbalizing, describing, sharing, initiating a solution. Feeling and dealing are the preconditions for the self states of vitality and empowerment. And like I said, invalid self states are missing feeling and or dealing. So you'll have a handout that has the main self states that are involved in the scenario of preceding homosexual enactment, or just in general with compulsive issues. Let's start with these main ones and show the main ones we're working with here. Assertion, shame, gray zone, and Nicolosi called the last one homosexual enactment, but because I deal with so many other issues, I just call this acting. And then there's greed. That's set up like that for a reason. So I'll explain. So first, assertion is the first valid self state. When you're in the self state of assertion, you're feeling and dealing.
What is the title of this, and then what is this?
The self state model.
These are all the self states that you could count.
These are the ones that there may be more, but these are ones we're dealing with, especially when it comes to like most issues. But I do have some ideas, so I'm still mulling over and contemplating some things because I would say a lot of this is more particularly helpful for male people's issues, because assertion is most associated with masculinity. receptivity is more associated with femininity. So which signs when I work with a female, her self-state that she might need to work at getting into is receptivity. But there are times when also need to develop their assertiveness. So it depends on the situation each client, where I'm seeing that they need to work out. So my basic definition for assertion is it is the authentic expression of the self. So you're authentically feeling your feelings, you're authentically expressing your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, and when it comes to your behaviors, you're being the active agent. So when you're in your self-stated assertion, you're not just saying, well, let's say I'm lonely, and I feel so lonely. I hope someone will come by and like want to spend some time with me. No, if you're in your self-stated assertion, I'm feeling lonely, well, let me initiate, let me be the active agent in my life to make that need. You're gonna do something about it. So you're not gonna be passive. Passivity is gonna be the opposite of assertion. Not just expecting things to just happen for you. You're gonna go and do what is meaningful for you. And this helps facilitate what we call an internal locus of control. So who's familiar with locus of control? So it's the theory about what has control over your decisions. And there's two types of loci of control, internal and external. So internal that ultimately I have a say in what I do in my life, what I decide to do, how I deal with the situations I'm facing. External locus control says is all these outside forces or things that I cannot help. They decide what I do in my life. And good clinicians should be aware that, because right now we're dealing with all this focus that actually is affirming that people have no power over themselves and that it is external forces that keep you from living a meaningful life. But the reality is the locus control that is most associated with having good mental health and being prosperous and actually excelling is the internal locus control. I mean, the external locus control is most associated with depression and anxiety. So getting to that self-state of assertion helps facilitate and nurture, an internal locus control, that there's something I can do about my situation. And like I said earlier, the assertion is the core of masculinity. That's why I believe this is so vital for clients with same-sex attraction issues to be familiar with. So I train them up in this, and there's things I do to help enforce it even in the therapeutic frame. So I'll get into that again. But this is the thing we notice. I'll ask clients to test this out, after I teach them this whole concept, or if they come to me, maybe it'll be prompted by them sharing a time to act it out, and I'll walk them through these cell states and help them make the connections themselves. But once people start to identify times when they've been in a self-state of assertion, they notice like, well, I'm feeling like connected with myself. Like there's not a disconnect between my thoughts and my behaviors, and my feelings and my behaviors. Like I'm actually, everything's in cohesion together. I'm well connected with others because one of our basic needs is for community and for connection with others. So I'm actually being active in meeting those needs. And so I'm like, well, when I'm in that state, I'm meeting my needs actively and I'm authentically expressing what I think and feel, and how when someone offends me or they do something, I express to them or to someone else who's safe. I'll get into that a little bit more. And I get that connection, I get that understanding, I'm meeting that need. The same-sex attraction really doesn't have a pull. When I'm in the self-state assertion, temptation isn't so tempting. So, what then makes it tempting? Oh, actually, before we'll get into it a little bit, but first, let me talk about when we talk about emotions. You can categorize emotions a lot of different ways. For our purposes, there's two ways we'll categorize them: expressed emotions and inhibitory emotions. The self-state assertion is most associated with the expressive emotions. And these may include emotions that we often consider as negative emotions, like anger and sadness. But what it has in common with other things like joy, excitement, love, alertness, enthusiasm, is that they're all emotions that are outwardly expressed. They involve proactive movement. They motivate you to take action in some way. For example, anger. The emotion that comes up when you identify a threat to your boundaries, your rights, your progress. And so it motivates you to fight against that threat. Sadness is a realization of a loss, motivation to grieve, cry, to express your sorrow, some way, your pain, something. Love. Love is more than an emotion, obviously, but it's an action, so it's cohesive. That when you love, you want to do good for someone else. So they're all about outward expression and goal-oriented behavior. So when you're in that self-state assertion, you can feel a wide range of emotions. You're going to deal with them appropriately, but you'll notice they're mostly going to be categorized by needs. So what takes us out of being assertion will be the other self-state of shame. But shame is not a valid self-state because it's one in which you're feeling, but you're not dealing. So it's a belief. Shame is sort of a mega category for a lot of negative thoughts and feelings. At the core, shame is about disconnection. Belief that one is unworthy of belonging and of purpose. And there's all these other lies that are associated with shame. So I think one example, if I do a little deeper dive into what shame is, how it impacts us. What precedes shame will be a double bind experience. So a double bind is a no-win scenario. Even if it's just mental, and you're not actually experiencing a double bind, but you're anticipating one or you're thinking of one. The idea is if a valid self-state is when you're feeling and dealing, the double bind is where you think, well, if I feel something, but if I deal with it, I'll make things worse. So, for example, my friend says something really insensitive to me, I feel hurt. But if I tell him I feel hurt, he'll think I'm a big baby. So I stuff it. I don't tell him right or think. So that's the double bind. I feel bad, but I'm not gonna say it. Or it could just be regular life. But you wake up on a Saturday and you really just want to sleep in. I want to get some rest. But then you think about all the stuff you gotta do. I can't deal with whatever. My body's saying sleep more, but I'm also thinking I got all this work to do. And you don't listen to your body, you don't express it, you just stuff, well, that tired feeling, I just gotta stuff it down. And then you're miserable throughout the rest of your day. So you see this, you trace it back to these sort of experiences. So what that does, it causes a disconnect within yourself when you're feeling but not dealing. But a disconnect within you, but especially when it involves other people, because shame is typically a social emotion. It's about how you, what your standing is, what your status is among others. There's then a disconnect, or there's a perceived disconnect between you and others. And it could just be anticipatory. So you anticipate a double bind. You're not actually experiencing it. So perhaps you've been invited to go to a party. Maybe you're a guy, you've been invited to go to a Super Bowl party. And you're like, I don't care about football at all. I don't know what I'm gonna do there. And like, okay, well, so you're anticipating you're not gonna fit in. So it's like, I kind of want to go, I want to hang out with the guys, but I'm gonna feel weird, I feel awkward. So it hasn't actually happened. You haven't been rejected yet, but you're anticipating it. You know my life. Speaking my language. So nervousness is usually anticipatory shame. And that's a double bind experience. And the experience is usually too intense to handle for long. So shame, self-state is usually like a shame moment. It's so overwhelming that you either resolve it quickly or you move into the next self-state. So some differences between assertion versus shame. When you're in assertion, you have affective expansion. You're expressing yourself openly. You're emotionally open. You feel like free in your chest, and you feel like there's an openness and a lightness when we're in our self-state assertion. You're relationally connected. Whereas in shame, you're relationally disconnected. And you're emotionally closed, you're constricted. The body also expresses shame in certain ways. You should see when someone's in shame, they hide their face, they hide their gaze, they hunch over. There's a gripping in their chest, like a pulling down. So when I ask people, I do a lot of body work, when you're saying you feel something, go to your body, what do you feel? It helps them get to connect with their emotions, and they help them realize, oh, this feeling in my body is associated with this emotion. Assertion is a vitality affect, whereas shame is an inhibitory affect. So we have certain shame-based reactions. I got a lot of this. So I combine different sources. So not all of this is stuff that you'll get from Nicholas's book, but a lot of this is from Dan Allen, especially Wounded Heart. So when we're feeling shame, especially when we're anticipating rejection, we withdraw, we avoid. Very common shame-based reaction. Another one is we wear masks. We put on a persona, we put on an act. It's taking on a false self. With guys with same-sex attraction in particular, there's certain masks that are very common to see. One is what we call the good boy image. He learned to be passive and docile and nice. I hate nice. Nice means just being agreeable just to get along with the accepted. Nice is not nice is not the same thing as being kind. Right? So nice is about getting approval. You might not be passive or just go along, get along. And so the good boy is always, oh, I never cause any waves, mommy. All right, I'm passive, and I also like I have a block in a way. You see the nice guys, the good little boy persona is almost like he never asserts himself. He never speaks up, he never disagrees with mom. And so that's the mask get put on to survive in that environment, to get the love you thought you would get. The flamboyant false self. It's the exaggeration of being more feminine, and it's a mask they wear so long that they don't have to turn it off at times. So you can also see the false self with women when they put on more of the stud lesbian false self, the veneer to keep themselves protected, that mask. This is what it takes to get the respect, the clout that it needs. Then there's contempt, and contempt is hostility. There's two types of contempt. There's self-focused contempt and others-focused contempt. So contempt is when you are now aware, you're conscious of the thing about yourself that you're ashamed of, and you attack it. And or you attack the people that have become aware of it, even if they only became aware of it inadvertently. You know, someone could just like notice something about you. Maybe, for example, guess off like that guy for the gay list, and you misunderstood. They said, "Oh, can you say it again?" The way he said it, I couldn't tell what he said. And he's like, interprets it, oh, it's because of my list, and feeds himself internally. Or, for example, I got a guy I'm working with for years, with this guy, and he's really tall, 6, quite a tall grade. He's like 6 something, and big dude, but high pitched voice, and so to tell. So he's in college, he's at the cafeteria, and he's talking, and there's some other girl at the table, and she's like, "Oh, are you gay?" Like blows up his spot, and just like this, and of course he's doing same-sex attraction, and he contempt himself. He lashed out at her, and like starts yelling at her in some way, but he's showing contempt to her because of the contempt he has for himself. Okay, I can go into this on and on. But those are the 3: withdrawal, mask, and contempt are some of the most common shame-based reactions. So like I said, the shame self state is so powerful and overwhelming that we don't stay in it very long. It's a more of a shame moment, and if we don't resolve it quickly, we then move into the gray zone. The gray zone is really like a prolonging of the shame state. And this is really another invalid self state because you're neither feeling nor dealing. It's more of a mood state. And so it's a when we go into shame, let me actually backtrack a little bit. With shame, it's a shutdown. Okay, when you're having that anticipation and that a threat from the double bind experience, feel like you're in danger from that double bind, it overwhelms you, so you just shut down, and that's the shame. It's this. So, gray zone is a prolonging of that. You can be in the gray zone for a few minutes, or a few hours, days, weeks, months, years. I work with some clients like I live in the gray zone. I don't know any other way but being in the gray zone. It's a pervasive state of disappointment with vague and undefined frustrations. You know, it feels that they're irritated, but they don't know the cause. Gray zone. They have hurt feelings, they're passive, they're lonely, they're feeling blah. That's signs that, all right, you're in the gray zone. It's the opposite of assertion. The person then assumes a passive posture regarding their needs, just hoping things will happen, but they don't put any work into it. And they perceive themselves as trapped, stuck, helpless, hopeless. And essentially it's like a type of depression. And so they're in a very low mood. And essentially, the gray zone is a defense against grief. Because to address wounds and losses would be so painful they don't want to feel it at all. So they shut down emotion. So they might be feeling certain emotions, but they're not feeling the anger or the sadness associated with any pains. In the gray zones, we associate with the inhibitory emotions. Shame, fear, anxiety, apathy, boredom, numbness. All the emotions that they inhibit in two ways. They inhibit action, and they also inhibit awareness of the other emotions, like anger and pain, sadness. So they keep you in this stuck state. And keep you from pursuing positive goals. But we don't want to stay in this blah state, feeling numb, blah, and depressed. We want to feel good at some point, right? So that leads to acting out. I want to feel good, but I also don't want to do the work to actually meet my needs adequately. So I want to do the work as passively as possible. So when you're in the shutdown and you're in the gray zone, you assume a consummatory posture. So what do? We scroll on our phones mindlessly. We binge eat food. We look at porn. There I can get the sense of intimacy without actually doing the work of intimacy with a real person. We do something risky. We just sort of shut down our thoughts and our wisdom, make our discretion, and do something crazy. So we act out. It presents as an escape from that low affect and loneliness in the gray zone. And so in that passivity, we just take a consultative approach. We desire positive feelings without the work involved in addressing our true needs. So it's like a pseudo assertion. We think we're being assertive, we think we're feeling and dealing, but you're not really dealing with those issues. It gives you the illusion of a solution. So what's the way back? So normally what happens is I deal with a client and they tell me I just acted out. Okay. Now on top of it, if they acted out in a way that they're trying to change, they just had a gay hookup or they looked at porn again. Now they just do something that they're trying to change. And one of the other lies of shame is there's something about me that's defective at my core, and I cannot change it. It's one of the other lies of shame that helps drive addiction. So you just acted out again. That message comes, oh, here's evidence now that I can't change. So the acting out just feeds back into your shame. And so it becomes a cycle of act out, now I'm ashamed again of what I just did, compounds of shame that was already there at the start, and then I go back to the gray zone, act out again, and it becomes a different. Okay. So what we do is we identify the shame moment. Like, let's trace it back. Like, all right, when did the urge to act out start? What day was that? We acted out Saturday morning. Okay, how are you feeling when you woke up Saturday morning? Like crap. I'm like, okay, so something must have happened already, even the night before. What happened Friday? How are you feeling Friday when you woke up? I was feeling pretty good Friday. Okay, how are you feeling by the time you went to bed? Miserable. Okay, something happened in between. So what happened? What did you do during the day? Well, I met with a friend, we had coffee, and I kept looking at my friend as we're talking, and he kept looking down at his phone. And then I just sort of felt weird after that, felt awkward, and I just stopped sharing with him what I was talking about. So moved on. Like, did you ever address it? No? Oh, okay. And then what was your mood like after that? Well, and then I had that little look at porn later, and I tried to fight it, but then I woke up and I was still feeling lost, so then I looked at porn Saturday morning. Okay. All right. So where's that shame moment for you? Where was the moment of disconnect? Yeah, with his friend. Supposed to be connected with his friend, and the friend is sending a signal to him that he's not interested in what he said. So it says, I'm not worthy. I'm not interesting. What I have to say doesn't matter. And then he put himself in a double bind where, well, I feel bad about this, but if I speak up, it's fucking worth it. Either it'll make things worse or just won't help at all. So I stuff it down. But your negative feelings just don't disappear because you stuff them. Come back in another way. So we identify the shame moment there, and so we have two solutions. All right, I call one the higher path, that's to double loop. And then the other path is what I call the lower path. So this is the final version of the cell state model that you have in your handouts. So what is a double loop? Well, the double loop is to undo the double bind. All right, if assertion is to feel and deal, to authentically express yourself, but the double bind is thinking, well, if I express myself, I'll make things worse. Then, to double loop is to reality test that. Well, will you make it worse if you express yourself? So there's actually 3 levels of double looping. All right, top level double looping is going to have the greatest risk, or greatest chance of harm, but also the greatest reward. And that's where you go to the source of the shame moment. So for that example, going to that friend who wasn't listening as you were talking with him, and share with him, when you did that, this is what I felt. You helped connect his behavior to your feeling. And if an effective double looping will involve that friend listening, showing and demonstrating understanding and acceptance. So that person hears like, so when you're saying like, when I was looking at my phone, you felt rejected, you thought I was rejecting you, you felt hurt. Yes, I understand. And maybe there's an apology involved. Sometimes some situations are just perceptions. And so apology may not necessarily be needed, but at least the understanding, the key thing is to get that understanding and acceptance from the other person. So that's top of it. That like, well, there goes the shame. It's resolved. It's not always possible or feasible. Some people are like, no, my dad, I can't talk to my dad about stuff. Some people you go and talk to them, hey, when you did this, I felt this, and they'll just double down. And be like, well, you need to grow up, stop being a big baby. It's like, and so, well, they proved my fear. It really did make things worse. Now you feel like even worse. So I don't recommend that top level double looping for every situation. You have to use discretion. Sometimes you get to the point like, you know what? I deserve to stand up for myself either way. So you gotta get that point where you have enough ego strength, you know, and a support system as well. Don't be out there like a little ranger confronting people. You don't have to let them talk to if they're not supporting you. So maybe that's not feasible. So mid-level double looping is medium risk, medium reward. And that's to go to another person who's not associated with the situation, not to triangulate them, but to express to them what you're experiencing and how you're feeling in reaction. And for that person to show understanding and acceptance. And for guys, the recommendation is another male, someone that you respect and you admire. You know, whoever is the problem population for you. Some women, it's like they're already dealing with like emotional dependency, so go to a guy that maybe. But for a lot of women, there is a difficulty with connecting with women, so go to a woman that you respect and admire. When it's someone you respect, then there's still a little bit of risk with it. There needs to be some risk so that you can overcome the fear. A lot of guys, they grew up with their mom, feeling so comfortable with their mom. Oh, I talk to my mom about everything. Well, then stop going to her with your problems. Go to your dad now, who's always been waiting in the wings, but he just hasn't connected with you well, but he's willing to. That is the situation. And so, dad, try to initiate more, try to show that you're willing to talk more. Or maybe just a guy friend or a guy mentor. So, you gotta figure out who's feasible to do so. And if someone like that is not available or they're busy at the moment, then at the very least, you can do low-level double looping. And that's low risk, low reward. So some people will do this, like, but it still didn't fully help, it still acted out effort. Like, well, remember, that's low reward. It helps, but it might not be adequate all the time. So I usually say you do low-level double looping regardless, because it really helps to do this first. And then you also try to do one of the other double looping as well. So what low-level double looping is, double loop yourself. You take a moment, you do some introspection, you do some journaling, or you just like, let me understand what just happened, what I'm experiencing, why I'm feeling that, and show some curiosity and compassion for yourself. And the great thing is too, especially when I'm working with my Christian clients, is you're never really doing it alone. Even when you're doing that low-level double looping, you're still there with God. So He can bring revelation. So what happens as you do the double looping, it brings you back into assertion. Because now you've actually felt and dealt. Now sometimes as you're doing the double looping, it brings up another pain, brings up a deeper wound. Or maybe it is what the situation was, such a deep wound, that you have to do the lower level double looping. Oh, sorry, I should have moved on. So here's double looping, so, take a shot of that, guys. Grief. Grief is the other balanced self state. Feeling and dealing. It's allowing yourself to feel and express the pain, sadness, anger over a loss or a deficit. And maybe through tears, not always, but tears are healthy because when you cry, you're releasing toxic neurotransmitters. All the stress hormones that build up when you're in a threat state, they're released when you cry. And so release that stress toxin. It brings healing.
Makes sense.
Then you can grieve, do grief work by yourself, in alone time with God, you can grieve with another person. Whatever you need to do. A little bit of both.
Really?
And what you're doing, you're showing compassion to that hurt part of yourself. And it may be the younger part of you that's coming up. Memories are coming up. And you need to show compassion to that part. And even those the lower path, I call it the lower path because it's so painful to do the grief work. But in the end, it makes your assertion even stronger. Now you have evidence that I've gone through the worst of it. I can handle it.
Yeah.
Now, a little bit of note about tears. Tears over loss that has not occurred are from despair or fear. When you're crying, like I have a client who has a lot of anxiety, and he just anticipates something bad happening, but it hasn't happened. He starts crying over that. That's not healing. You never feel good after that. It's when he goes back to a wound and he cries after that he feels better. Because there's no end to tears about things that could happen in the future. Because there's no end to things that could happen in the future.
It's
But
worried.
there's a finite amount of tears for things that happened in the past. So you may have to keep going to that well, but eventually, like I can look back at that wound and it'll bring up tears.
Makes sense. Amen.
So let's bring in polyvagal theory. I hope I'm not going to just, oh gosh, I'm gonna wrap this up as quickly as possible. So the latest innovations in trauma treatment originated with Stephen Porges, and it's referring to the vagus or VAGUS, so not Vegas like Las Vegas. It's called Vegas because Vegas is root word to vagabond. So it's the longest nerve in the human body. And the theory is that it's what helps regulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So in your autonomic nervous system, it's like that's the part of the nervous system, of course, what you see that. Yeah, is what regulates all your automatic functions. So autonomic and automatic, all the things that are necessary for you to survive. There's two parts of the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, sympathetic and feeling. So sympathetic is active, it's about you moving, getting needs met, usually to help you survive. Okay, to deal with threat, but not always. Whereas parasympathetic is about stopping, slowing, resting, digesting. Okay, so there's two main branches of the vagus nerve that are supposed to help with that parasympathetic nervous system. First part is the ventral vagal complex. It's part of the vagus nerve that goes into your heart and lungs. And that's what helps bring us into homeostasis, our resting and digestive state. We're most relaxed and most at ease. Then there's the dorsal vagal complex that goes down your back and into your guts, into your pelvis, and it ends at your perineum. And that, well, we'll get into that. So, right here is a typical polyvagal chart. So you have a handout with this chart. So what you'll see there is that green section is homeostasis. That's the ventral vagal complex. And when you're in that state of homeostasis, you feel joy, you're in the present, you're grounded, you're feeling compassion, you're curious, you're open. And the big thing is, one of the big things that helps us get into homeostasis is social engagement. Especially when you're growing up, we have mirror neurons that as you're growing and you're a little child, you're trying to figure out what's safe, what's healthy, what's good. So a baby has no point of reference except the mom, for example. So let's say the baby's on the table and a spider falls on the table. If mom reacts to that with fear, baby doesn't know how to react to that. Baby's mirror neurons are judging how to react based on what mom's reaction is. Ah. So if mom reacts calmly, baby goes, oh, I don't have to be scared of that. Okay. She can contain herself like, all right, let's just shoot away or whatever. So what helps us is when we can co-regulate with someone. So else we come along and they're calm, they have a calm nervous system, and they're around us, well, we're all activated, we can have a calm nervous system as well. So this line here is the sort of a breach into sympathetic nervous system activation, where now you're either in a threat mode or you're being active. This in here, ventral vagal complex, you're resting and digesting. There's not a whole lot of activity here. So that squiggly line is actually the ideal. The ideal is that we are going through motions of sympathetic nervous system activation, responding to needs, taking action, and then resting, and then responding to needs and resting. So the ideal is not to stay constantly, like, oh, just sleeping all day, not doing anything meaningful. Like, you're gonna die. You'll die because you at some point need to get up and make yourself some food to eat, or go out to work and make some money so you can make some food to eat. Yeah. You can't just be resting and investing all day long. So the ideal is actually a squiggly line. But the problem is when that line going into sympathetic nervous system activation doesn't go down. And the energy starts going up and up because you're still perceiving a threat of some sort. So we have sort of a common threat reaction. Those are the fight or float, right? But there's actually 5 threat reaction types. So you have, I usually say fight or flight, but this chart has flight first. You have flights. There's anxiety, there's levels to it. You got worry, anxiety, fear, panic at the top. And that's the whole idea is with these 3 threat reactions here, the main idea is that I can do something about the threat I'm facing. There's something I can do about it. So flight that is I can flee from the threat, I can avoid it. Fight is I can do something about it by moving to the threat and conquering the threat, defeating the threat. And so there you feel frustration, anger, rage at the top. Fawn is I can move with the threats. I can appease the threats. I can can't beat them, join them. And so if I can please the threats, then I'll be safe. But that energy keeps going up and it reaches that barrier. It goes from I can do something about the threat to I can't do something about this threat. And that's where we go into freeze, where you just shut down, you're overwhelmed. And you start dissociating, you get numb, you're depressed. And that's where the dorsal vagal complex comes in. And it brings in an emergency shutdown. So whereas the ventral vagal complex it brings you to homeostasis and resting and digesting, dorsal vagal shuts it down. They're like, slam, stop. We're in too much danger. We're too overwhelmed, too much energy. We need to shut things down. So you go to freeze, and if you stay in that state too long, you're in flop. You're still in blah, it's lethargic. To me, that flop state, well, obviously so much depression and anxiety combined. People with anxiety, they get overwhelmed to what they shut down their depressed. They run out of energy. Because all the energy they spend with their sympathetic nervous system. And that's also where addiction tends to happen. So maybe you're making the connections here to the self state. So the assertion is that squiggly line, where you're being active and then you're resting, you're meeting your needs, and then you're chilling out. So an adult mind is that sympathetic nervous system activation. So in that this flight or fawn, there's different types of adult mind, and it's sort of shame reactions happening. And that shame is equivalent to the freeze state, the initial breach into I can't do anything about this, I need to shut down. And gray zone is that flop state. So the extended state, a dorsal vagal shutdown. And acting out, that's going into addiction. Now there can be times just in the sympathetic nervous system where you have breaches of your integrity and you act out in some way. But it becomes more addictive when you're really shut down. And so double looping, well, that's the same thing as social engagement. So I have another version of the polyvagal chart with different self states there, so you can see how it maps on. So what are some things to take note of? So homeostasis is maintained by moderation of sympathetic nervous system activation. Doing meaningful activity, even fun and pleasurable ones, involve a degree of stress. You're playing a video game. You're silly game on your phone. I like to play Minesweeper on my phone. There's a little bit of stress involved. I hit this button, I might hit the ball, you know? So even something that's fun, if you're playing a game, there's no threat at all in the game, you're gonna get bored. So we need threats, even for things that are pleasurable. We need some stress. You try to give someone an assignment, you tell them, just get it done whenever. No deadline. Are they gonna get it done? Deadlines are important, otherwise you're not gonna do anything. So social engagement facilitates conversations through co-regulation, which requires self-assertion and courage. Now, the trouble is, for our SSA clients, is the anticipatory shame. They want to connect with someone so they can co-regulate with their words that will be rejected. And so that's where you have to work with them to ease in. And so shame, yeah, fight, flight, fawn. Well, what is fight? That's contempt. If there's a shame-based reaction we talked about earlier, the fight reaction is a contempt reaction. Flight is withdrawal. Fawn is putting on the false self. And so that you can only do those for so long before you get overwhelmed, build into a shame state of flux. So when the sympathetic nervous system gets overwhelmed, the dorsal vagal shuts down. I already talked about this. So it's all equivalent to everything else sharing with the cells in the muscle. So we have neuroscience to back up what Nick Lewis was talking about years ago. So we want to self-regulate. So we're in the shame state. We want to use double looping for when we're in these fight, flight, fawn, and freeze modes. There's still a chance when you're in freeze to help the person double loop. But the first thing is you got to down regulate. Because when you're in that activation, you're got all this energy rising, and you need to relax the mind. So a lot of times I'll start a session with a client, they want to tell me about something. And like, I'm feeling so nervous talking about it. Now, when people ask me, say, just go ahead and say it, it's safe. No. Like, all right, I have a client, this happened the other day. She was ready to talk to me about something, but you can see she's building up like, all right, let's take a moment, relax the body. All right. Relax, get to that relaxed state now. Share. Regret. So I find it helpful to actually reconceptualize same-sex attraction as a threat reaction. In fact, we have studies that show that same-sex attraction is associated with higher amygdala activation. So the amygdala is part of the brain that assesses for threats. And so they have brains that have shown men who are considered heterosexual looking at porn of women, heterosexual porn, versus gay identified men looking at homosexual porn. And we see the difference between the gay men looking at homosexual porn have higher amygdala activation. So that could be explained, don't know exactly, but it could be explained by how the same-sex attraction arousal experience is associated with fear, shame, pain. Now, if someone is in the gray zone, what they do then is you actually have to get them out of deactivation. They're already shut down, they're deactivated. So you actually have to get them energized a bit. Like getting them to do some activity that is not too strenuous. Go for a walk. It might not be physical activity either. Read, pray, journal, but not something passive and consummatory, like watch TV. That'll help consume you. No, do something that requires some degree of effort. And then in therapy, I reinforce the assertion. I think it's my last slide. I require clients to have a goal in each session. Like either a goal, or at least they have to bring in what they want to work on. This has multiple purposes. One, it counters their tendency toward passivity. When you have clients with things of attraction, especially, they're typically out of their assertion, and they're in that kind of passive state. So requiring that they have a goal means they have to be thinking constantly about what do they want? Gotta get in touch with their desires, their feelings, their needs, and express them. Sometimes they're so disgusted they don't know what to say. So I get clients get frustrated. You always want to bring up a goal. It's for your own good to do that. Also, that protects me against threats or accusations of being coercive. Because that's one of the main accusations against my field, is that we coerce clients to work on things they don't want to work on. Well, they bring the goal to me. So I use a cab driver analogy. I tell clients, I'm the cab driver, you're the passenger, you tell me where you want to go, and I figure out the best way to get us there. And if they're like distressed, they don't know how to tell me what they want to work on, that is actually something to work on, well, that's what we're gonna work on then. And so I teach clients what I call the 3 C's. Be curious, passionate, and then coach themselves. A lot of times we try to coach ourselves through anxiety, just buck up, just get it done. But we don't start being curious about why am I anxious? Why am I feeling threatened right now? And then showing compassion to their heart. You can't really coach yourself to have courage when you don't do those first 2. There we go. Thank you.